So now we're in Visio and we're going to add some attributes to the guest entity. This is really just a logical model here. We have the various entities that are discussed in the business rules. I haven't added any attributes. I just put question marks in there. You know, if you want, you can use this as an exercise and fill in the rest. But if you feel like you've got the concept down pat, then you know, it would really just amount to a lot of busy work, I think, when it comes down to it. Maybe you can do a couple on your own and then leave the rest. But anyway, let's look at this guest entity here. The first thing I want to drive home is that every table or every entity in your model in your physical model, I should say, should have a primary key. All right. So I think I'm going to start by adding a primary key attribute, which you can see in your shapes pane on the left. So I'm going to drop that in there. And this, why don't I just double clicked where it says attribute name. I'll call it guest ID. Okay, and you know, we talked about data types. I think I'll use the data types in the leftmost column that we talked about here. Again, access is a possibility as well, so if that's the case, then you can use this column, but I'm going to use this column for this discussion. So I think for the ID, I'm going to go with integer identity. That's a common way to go about it, and the word identity means it's not just a plain old integer like you would use for somebody's age or the quantity of an item on an order. This means that it's a surrogate key, and whatever database management system I use, be it Oracle or Access or MySQL, SQL Server, that database management system is going to handle the numbering system. You might see something like this, like 1, 1, for example, and what that would mean is that, okay, IDs start at 1, and then every successive record is going to be incremented by 1. Well, let's say you want to start numbers, you want 6-digit IDs, you want to start the numbering at 100,000, okay, but then increment by 1, you could do that. All right, so that's the primary key. We'll start with that. And now I'll just add a regular attribute. You see me over here in the shapes, just grab the regular attribute. And now I'll do the guest first name. Again, no spaces. You could do F name if you want to abbreviate F name and L name. I know we're not going for the last name in this particular entity, but that's another thing you could do if you want to conserve space. And then I think I'm going to make that a varchar. And we talked about maybe 25 characters max on a pet's first name, which is probably overkill, but whatever. Like I said, it's a judgment call. And then I would specify the null status. In this case, is not null. Every animal that goes into the table should have a name. Okay. So anyway, you know, I think you can see that the table is already growing, and I've only added a couple of attributes. So what you can do, I think, to conserve space, you can forego the null status. I want you to know what it is, what it means, but if you're really trying to save space on your model, then that would be one thing that you can cut. It's not as important as the attribute name and the data type. Okay, so we have the first name, and then we said we wanted a nickname as well. So I'm just going to drop another attribute on here. And we'll make this a varchar, 25 characters as well. And I mean, this is one, if we were doing null status, I would say null would have to be allowed. Not every pet is going to have a nickname. Okay, same thing like if you're dealing with a person, the middle initial, well, that would have to be a null, because you need to allow nulls because some people don't have middle names. Okay, and then let's see. This the next attribute I'm going to add is for the type of the animal, meaning canine or feline or dog or cat, if you wanted to say. You know, here's one. You might be tempted to do this, and I probably did do this on another model somewhere, but this is one of those generic words that you should probably avoid. That might be reserved by some database management systems, the type keyword. Things like name, date, type, super generic. Like I said, try to avoid that. So why don't we instead do guest type? Guest type. And look, I mean, if the values are going to be simply dog or cat, and only those two things, maybe I could make it a char. That would be for a fixed length string and say it's 3 characters, meaning it's the value is either going to be dog or cat. But if we're opening it up to opening up this business to, you know, bird care or snakes or gerbils, whatever else, then you may have to rethink that. Okay. But anyway, again, it's a judgment call. You need to consider all possibilities and then make a decision and stick with it. Okay, and then we have the breed. Again, I think that would have to be a varchar. I'll just go with around 25 characters. Okay, and let's see. Then the age, we said the age if known. Okay, age might be an integer. Okay, and, oh, whoops, I'll give it an attribute name first. So that's an integer. And then, you know, like I said, if we don't know it, it could be null. I know I'm inconsistent here. I'll just add all of the, make the breed null. Maybe they don't know if it's a mixed breed or something. Not sure. For the guest type, I think, well, maybe go with a not null. I think the business would have to know if it's a dog or a cat. And then for the first name, we're going to go with a not null. Okay, you can see how much space has been added to the model. Now this, you don't have to do null, not null. Here's why. It's a primary key. Not null is a prerequisite on a primary key. I mean, you have to have a primary key. It cannot be null. So it's assumed with the primary key that it's a not null. So you don't have to specify null type on the primary key. So you see, that's how you can add attributes. And you know, your lines are going to be going haywire as you're adding attributes, and you know, the model is expanding. My word of advice is to just let the lines do what they're doing, and then when all is said and done, when all your attributes are in place, then you can pick through and, you know, move your lines and make them look as nice as you can. But you, like I said, don't spend too much time in that, especially while you're in the process of adding attributes, because they're just going to go all over the place. Save that for the polishing phase at the very end.